A factory worker father, the engagement's off as soon as she said that. My stepmother splashed tea on my dad's face next to her, laughing hysterically. My stepfather didn't even try to scold her. The stain on the suit my dad had specially cleaned for this day spread quickly. Fortunately, the tea was lukewarm and almost cold, so there was no worry about burns. While I was surprised, I handed a napkin to my dad, and Tom panicked while drying my father's suit. Even while worrying about injuries, Tom couldn't help but laugh at his parents' behavior. During this time, my dad said nothing, just stood up straight, pointed at them, and said, "Well then, I'll just ruin your company." He said this in a voice I'd never heard before and took my hand to leave the O'Connor household behind us. Tom's voice scolded his parents, then he quickly followed us. "I'm really sorry, father-in-law. I'll make my parents apologize later." "No need, we're done with them anyway," he said gravely, patting Tom's shoulder. "My name is Yvonne Warner, a 26-year-old office worker. My family had a bit of a situation. My mom wasn't around. She passed away when I was little, and my dad raised me single-handedly. My father was in charge of the factory and was supposed to be busy, but he never missed any of the school events. He'd often turn to work right after the events, and I deeply respected him for that. In college, I dated Tom, who was 2 years my senior. Tom was gentle, sincere, and polite. He was popular in college but accepted my confession. However, Tom had concerns about his parents. He didn't elaborate much, apparently. There was some conflict with them, but I didn't pry. Still, I continued dating Tom, who had no issues himself. He lived alone since college, but occasionally visited his parents. He was always looking exhausted the next day. Tom always put me first, and I was proud of him. I wanted to introduce him to my dad, curious how they would react to each other. It was a mixture of fear and excitement when we bumped into my dad on a date. "Oh, Dad, aren't you working today? What's up?" "Ah, Yvonne, is that you? I'm just heading back from a client meeting. And who's this guy?" "Oh, right, this is Tom O'Connor. We're dating now." My dad isn't really stern, but he has this serious look that can be misunderstood. Tom seemed just as serious when he first met my dad, pretty nervous actually. "Nice to meet you." "I'm Tom O'Connor." "I'm honored to be dating Yvonne." For the first time, I introduced Tom to my dad. Tom, looking tense, bowed deeply and greeted my dad. My dad, happy to accept Tom, smiled warmly and started chatting with him. "So you're Yvonne's boyfriend. Don't be so nervous. Take good care of her, okay?" "Yes, I'll do my best." "Thank you." As they kept talking, Tom relaxed and they got along well. I was relieved to see the two important men in my life getting along. I had been worried about what if my dad didn't like Tom. We couldn't spend much time as Dad had work, so we parted ways after saying goodbye to Dad. I turned back to Tom, who looked dazed. "Are there any problems?" But he suddenly got excited. "That was really your dad, right?" I was puzzled by his odd question, but answered without hesitation, "Yes, that's my dad." "Why? What's up?" Right, that's what I thought." Tom crossed his arms, deep in thought. I grew curious and asked him, "What are you pondering so hard? Is there something A factory worker father, the engagement's off as soon as she said that. My stepmother splashed tea on my dad's face next to her, laughing hysterically. My stepfather didn't even try to scold her. The stain on the suit my dad had specially cleaned for this day spread quickly. Fortunately, the tea was lukewarm and almost cold, so there was no worry about burns. While I was surprised, I handed a napkin to my dad, and Tom panicked while drying my father's suit. Even while worrying about injuries, Tom couldn't help but laugh at his parents' behavior. During this time, my dad said nothing, just stood up straight, pointed at them, and said, Well then, I'll just ruin your company. He said this in a voice I'd never heard before and took my hand to leave the O'Connor household behind us. Tom's voice scolded his parents, then he quickly followed us. I'm really sorry, father-in-law. I'll make my parents apologize later. No need, we're done with them anyway, he said gravely, patting Tom's shoulder. My name is Yvonne Warner, a 26-year-old office worker. My family had a bit of a situation. My mom wasn't around. She passed away when I was little, and my dad raised me single-handedly. My father was in charge of the factory and was supposed to be busy, but he never missed any of the school events. He'd often turn to work right after the events, and I deeply respected him for that. In college, I dated Tom, who was 2 years my senior. Tom was gentle, sincere, and polite. He was popular in college but accepted my confession. However, Tom took a deep breath, as if making up his mind, and started to talk. Actually, there's something I want to tell you about my parents. It's a bit of a long story, but I need you to hear it all. The story Tom told was quite shocking. According to him, his parents lack class and only judge people by their educational background and what kind of job they do. They've been horrible to him, constantly interfering in his life. When he introduced a girlfriend before, they'd criticize her on the spot and send her away. The girls would end up breaking up with him in tears. That's why Tom wanted to marry me but was worried because of his parents. But I told him there's no need to worry. We don't have to involve his parents in our marriage, just bear with them during the wedding formalities. My dad seemed to like Tom, so what's the problem? I don't mind about that. It's okay, my dad liked you, so don't worry. Really? That makes me happy. When I first met your dad, I was surprised how different he is from my own parents. I thought if I marry Yvonne, I'll become the son of such a great man. But getting married means my parents become your parents too, and I couldn't decide. He brightened up when I said my dad liked him, but soon sighed deeply. However, Tom seemed to have an idea and looked up, apologizing. When we go to meet my parents for our marriage, can we have your dad come too? I want them to see there are such respectable people around. It might not change them right away, but I hope it does. Okay, I'll talk to my dad about it, but I wish you had talked to me about this in a different way. Oh, sorry, I'll do it properly from now. Tom suddenly realized, hurriedly and properly proposing marriage to me. After receiving Tom's proposal, I quickly decided to talk to my father about it. Initially hesitant, my father agreed when Tom came to formally ask for my hand in marriage. Then Tom and I set a date to meet his parents. On the day of the visit, all dressed up, we stood at the front door of Tom's family home, meeting Tom's parents for the first time. After hearing such stories, I was understandably nervous. My father, trying to lighten the mood, laughed and encouraged us. No need to be so tense. Tom's parents are just a bit overly concerned. Be confident. Feeling reassured by my dad's pat on the back, my nerves eased slightly. As it was time, Tom rang the doorbell, but there was no sound. We even wondered if they were not home. In a slight panic, Tom rang again, but still no response. Not wanting to make a bad impression in front of my father, Tom excused himself and went inside first. My father and I exchanged glances and waited silently for Tom. Soon, Tom came out looking flustered. Before I could ask what happened, Tom began making excuses with a forced smile. Sorry, there was a bit of a delay, but please wait. We'll be ready soon. And with that, he went back inside. My father sighed in exasperation, and I felt increasingly worried inside. This incident may even jeopardize our wedding plans. My father isn't short-tempered, but he dislikes dishonesty, so I couldn't help but consider the worst-case scenario. Lost in these thoughts, finally, Tom came out and awkwardly invited us in. Inside, his parents were waiting, but their demeanor was odd. His mother greeted us with a sly grin while his father looked away disinterested. We were led to the living room, but the tea served was hastily prepared and lukewarm. Tom's silence and the tense atmosphere made me uneasy. Nevertheless, I decided to push through with the introduction. Tom, regaining his composure, introduced my parents, and at the same time, he introduced us as well. Feeling the warmth of Tom's thoughtful introduction of both my father and me equally, our hearts were filled with gratitude. However, his parents sneered at the introduction, and in the next moment, his mother's hand reached for a teacup. "Factory working father, let's call off the engagement then," as soon as she said that, my mother-in-law splashed tea on my father. My father-in-law, who is smiling and giggling next to her, does not blame my mother-in-law for her actions. The stain on the suit my father had specially cleaned for this day spread quickly. Fortunately, the tea that was thrown at my dad was lukewarm and almost cold, so there was no worry about burns. Shocked, I offered my dad a handkerchief while Tom panicked, wiping off my dad's suit. Tom, worried about injuries, got angry at his parents, who only laughed in response. Meanwhile, my dad said nothing but stood up and pointed at them, saying, "Then I'll ruin your company," speaking in a voice I'd never heard before. He took my hand, and we left the O'Connor house behind us. Tom's voice scolded his parents, then quickly followed us. "Father-in-law, I'm really sorry. I'll have my parents apologize later." "No need, we're done with them anyway," my dad said gravely, patting Tom's shoulder. We went back to our house with Tom, and my dad immediately changed clothes. During that time, Tom was earnestly apologizing outside my dad's room, and I could hear my dad's troubled voice occasionally. However, I was too shocked by what Tom's parents had done to pay attention. I knew they wouldn't be easy to get along with, but I didn't expect such behavior. I was furious that they insulted my dad. Sitting on the living room sofa, clenching my fists, I replayed the event in my mind. It wouldn't help the situation, but I couldn't help it. When my dad finished changing, he and Tom came into the living room. Tom immediately apologized to me, almost bowing down. "Yvonne, I'm really sorry. I never expected them to do such a thing, especially to insult your dad. I'm truly sorry. I did something terrible." Tom clearly knew it wasn't something easily forgiven. His sincerity was evident as he didn't even ask for forgiveness. That meant I had to apologize to Tom as well. I took Tom's hand as he kneeled on the floor and apologized. "I'm sorry too. I should not have suggested it without knowing everything. I didn't expect things to turn out this way." Then I turned to my dad and apologized with all my heart. "Dad, I'm sorry this happened because of my thoughtless suggestion." My dad just looked down, troubled, and shrugged his shoulders. It was hard for him to say anything. None of us expected this outcome. But that meant my dad's threat was serious. I decided to ask him about it. "Dad, was what you said to them true? Are you really going to ruin their company?" To my question, my dad glanced at Tom and then nodded firmly. "Yes, it's true. I'm going to ruin their company. Their business was already struggling, so I've been thinking about what to do. This seems like a good opportunity to cut ties." My father's eyes showed unwavering determination. He runs an industrial company and is the CEO. His company is a renowned top-tier local enterprise where he serves as both the factory manager and CEO. Initially, he started as a worker in this factory. Actually, he gave up his dream of becoming a painter to raise me alone after my mother passed away. He worked tirelessly at the well-paying local factory. His hard work was recognized, leading to several promotions. Eventually, he caught the attention of the former CEO and kept getting promoted. When the previous CEO, also the former factory manager, decided to retire, he chose my father to take over the company. The company has expanded its business, owning various subsidiaries. One of these subsidiaries is managed by Tom's father, my father-in-law. We discovered this during our recent visit. Ideally, my father-in-law should have realized this, but he didn't due to Tom's mother's premature actions. Tom just wanted to say certainly. That his father worked for a subsidiary of my father's company, however, his parents' prejudices prevented this from being clarified, leading to the current situation. If his parents had listened carefully, things might not have turned out this way. My father mentioned that his company was facing some management difficulties. He was pondering what to do, as any negative impact could also affect his factory. I was considering layoffs to improve management, but I'd rather avoid that. It was a good opportunity to decide which parts to downsize, my father said with a troubled smile, clearly reluctant to lay off any of his employees. Regret was evident in every word spoken. After Tom's serious conversation with my father, he asked Tom in a low voice, "I've decided to close it down. But that means your parents will be in trouble. It's cruel, but are you sure you're okay with that?" Tom hesitated at first, but then looked firmly at my father and replied, "I've already cut ties with them. They did something unforgivable. I think part of the consequence is paying for their actions. More than that, I want them to reflect on what happened, including this incident. But I have a request. I know it's awkward to ask at this time, but please let me get engaged with Yvonne. I know I've caused trouble with my parents, but more than anything, I want to be with Yvonne. Please forgive me." My father, crossing his arms, pondered Tom's words. It might seem inappropriate right after such an incident. However, moved by Tom's earnestness, I also pleaded with my father. "Please, Dad. I know things turned out this way, but I want to be with Tom." After hearing our request, my father hummed for a while and then shook his head as if in resignation. "If you both feel the same way, it's fine. But there's a condition. Your parents are company executives. I want to know what you plan to do with their employees. If you can't do that, your marriage is off." My father said this and sent Tom away, not even glancing at me before returning to his room. A few days later, Tom came up with a plan for his father's company's employees. He had arranged a meeting with my father, and when I returned from work, they were discussing it. Tom had written down possible job placements for all the employees and was showing it to my father. "So I hope you can employ them at your company. I want to support their transition and contribute to the business's vitality," Tom said, bowing to my father. "And selfishly, I also want to work at your company. I'll work for free until they're settled and producing results. I want to compensate for any shortcomings with my work and salary. Once that's settled, I'd like to re-engage Yvonne." Tom, showing his earnestness, seemed to think that he was partly responsible for his company's collapse. He wanted to work hard to be the lubricant in this situation. "I just found out that our marriage would be delayed, but it's an unavoidable circumstance. Welcome back, Yvonne. You heard right. I'm sorry for deciding such an important thing on my own, but I thought it wouldn't be fair if I were the only one happy. Yes, you're too selfish. Dad, please let me work in the company with Tom. I'll work for free with you too, and I want you to accept Tom's proposal." As I said this, Tom tried to dissuade me, but I firmly insisted and desperately begged my father. While we were doing this, my father didn't say anything, but after a repeated plea, he uncrossed his arms and quietly nodded. Speaking of which, Tom's parents hadn't apologized yet. My father seemed to have been waiting for them for the past few days, but that period had ended. "Time's up," he muttered, beginning preparations to take over the father-in-law's company. Time passed, and finally the day came when the company collapsed. Tom's parents contacted us in protest, summoning the three of us to their home. When we arrived, the place was crowded with people protesting the company's closure. They were all former employees, angry and shouting. It seemed Tom's father hadn't explained anything to the employees. By summoning us, it looked like his parents intended to shift their failure onto us. As soon as they saw us, they pointed at us and started accusing. "Look there, that's the root of all evil. It's not me. They're the ones who ruined the company. Not me. Yes, especially that woman. She seduced our son and ingratiated herself with her father. We are victims too, so stop complaining about it." Others also vocally criticized my father and me, attempting to deflect attention away from themselves. Despite the parents' unrestrained accusations, Tom, visibly upset, tried to calm the former employees. "Please wait, everyone. Yes, my father's company collapsed, but it's because of those two. Also, I want to help all of you who suffered unfairly with job placements. Please listen to me." Gradually, the commotion subsided, and the former employees turned their attention to us. Tom then called out each person's name, announcing their new job placements. Realizing they were not abandoned, the employees breathed a sigh of relief. After announcing every employee's placement, his parents started causing a scene. "Hey, Tom, what about us? Why are you ignoring us? Yes, Tom, didn't we tell you we're victims too? Tell us our job placements. If you do, we might even forgive that man and allow your marriage to that woman." Ignoring his parents' outbursts, Tom began explaining how the company went bankrupt, despite it being an embarrassing story caused by his own parents. Tom revealed everything. "So, I apologize for the inconvenience caused to all of you. But thanks to a kind-hearted CEO, your jobs are secure. Please calm your anger and let's start working again from scratch." After addressing the employees, Tom turned to my father and deeply bowed. "I really apologize for the inconvenience caused. Thank you for listening to my selfish request. I will work with all my heart and soul." The former employees, seeing Tom, also bowed to my father, while his parents were the only ones to object. "Don't be fooled. That man ruined the company and that woman egged him on. Wake up to reality. You're struggling for jobs because the company was destroyed, right? Just because you're getting help doesn't mean you should lose sight of the truth." Despite the parents' desperate appeals, everyone had already heard the story from Tom. They completely ignored his parents. Even my father ignored their words. When the former employees looked to him for reassurance, he promised to inform them of the details later, and they left relieved while bowing to my father. The former employees began to leave. After everyone left and it was quiet, his parents started fussing about how they couldn't live anymore with the company gone. "We're losing this house we used as collateral. Yes, we're going to be homeless. What are we supposed to do now?" Tom sighed, in exasperation at his parents, who still wanted to blame us. "I don't care what you think, you got what you deserved, so it can't be helped. Why don't you learn a little remorse?" He reprimanded them, but they seemed not to be listening. Unable to bear their parents' persistence any longer, I finally lost my patience. "Haven't you just caused trouble for Tom all this time, boasting about being business owners and only caring about titles? Isn't that why this happened?" Upon hearing my words, his parents seemed ready to retort, as if to imply that I was being insolent, but then my father decisively stepped in, as if to say he wouldn't allow them to speak further. A business owner is supposed to take responsibility. You should at least complete your final task properly. Left speechless by our collective scolding, his parents could say nothing more. Leaving the two of them behind, we left the scene. Eventually, his parents lost everything: the company, the house, the land. They never provided any guarantees to the former employees and evaded responsibility. However, after losing everything, they ended up being caught for Dee and dashing. Tom's parents reached out to him for help, but Tom, having cut ties with them, coldly turned them away. Now they're probably in jail. We've heard nothing from them since. Even if they get out, they still have a debt to the former employees, so it's the same situation. Afterward, Tom and I quit our jobs and joined my father's company. We lived off our savings in the first month, working for free as promised. One day, we met a former employee of his parents' company at work. This person rushed over to us, eager to shake our hands at the new workplace. The employee expressed their struggle, gratitude to my father for giving them a chance, thanks to Tom for arranging the job, and also conveyed many thanks to me. I didn't remember, but apparently I had helped that person carry materials. Soon after he joined the company, the former employee left, expressing immense gratitude and a desire to keep working hard. Feeling somewhat redeemed by his words, we hurried to my father's office. He warmly welcomed us. He pulled out several thick envelopes from his desk drawer and handed them to us. "What's this, Dad?" "It's your salaries for the past months." It ended up being multiple envelopes because it couldn't all fit into one, he said with a cheerful laugh. We were stunned. It hadn't been many months, and with all the new employees hired, it seemed impossible for us to have made up for it. Yet here he was, giving us our salaries. We were unable to swallow the situation and remained pouting, but my father didn't care about it and continued. "Your hard work revitalized the team. They constantly expressed their gratitude and concern for you. I couldn't possibly leave such excellent employees unpaid, and our performance has improved significantly. Thank you, truly." Hearing this, we hugged each other and cried. We were so focused on our tasks that we didn't realize the impact we had made. But even more than that, we were moved by the concern shown for us. My father then added something even more wonderful. "Tom, I'm impressed with your leadership. If you're okay with my daughter, would you marry her?" "Yes, yes, of course." "I'm honored and grateful," Tom replied tearfully, bowing to me and my father. I hugged Tom, crying alongside him, and so we got married. We continued working at my father's company, living happily every day. Gradually, we became more adept at our jobs, contributing more effectively. This allowed us to discuss production efficiency and new ideas with my father. Tom was busy too, visiting the factories and subsidiaries, ensuring everything ran smoothly. And so, Tom was incredibly busy proposing solutions and suggesting the implementation of new systems to my father. We were more passionate in our work than ever before. Finding purpose truly makes work fulfilling. However, our time at the company was nearing a pause. Now I was about to take maternity leave. My father, Tom, our colleagues, and I were all looking forward to the arrival of our child.